land of the free, and home of the brave. May God bless these United States of America. Land of opportunity. That's what America advertised itself since the birth of our country. A land which you could have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Tell me now, do we really have life in America? Liberty? Pursuit of happiness? Sort of. How so? Taking a few pages out of my own life, I've had time to reflect on things. To be honest, rarely do I have any consensual interaction with a cop, but in times I do, it's always been professional. I've never been in trouble with police, neither do I have any criminal records of any kind. If anything, I'm a stand-up, perfect American citizen. Times I had gotten involved with cops was because of only recent years since 2020. My family by 2018 give or take split, but I stuck by my father since, and we moved to a small town. This small town, it had everything we wanted, everything we needed. Until we got here and we saw the truth. Drugs, corruption, organized crime. We walked into a hornet's nest on a lie of business opportunity. Never in my entire life have I seen such polarization firsthand. How so? In this town, if your bike isn't locked up, it's gone by morning. If you leave your car out for a couple days, your windows get smashed in, and whatever is inside gets stolen. You come out here, and suddenly they've managed to steal money from your bank account wirelessly through some shady Chinese bank. People break into homes almost like professionals and steal without consequence. How so? Because they snitch. And because they snitch, they're given a hotel for a day or so. I say organized crime because one day my father had his pistol literally on him. He remembered blacking out and eventually woke up to not only find his pistol gone, but also the front door open suddenly. He blacked out in the driver's seat of his car one day and woke up hours later with the door wide open. Medical problems? Sure. However, that would be true if we didn't find out he was actually being drugged. Because his symptoms were inexplainable to anyone, even including doctors out of state. One day I was working late and didn't get home until about 3 a.m. I came home to the front door open, my tactical-styled backpack. My $40 Yu-Gi-Oh card collection I've had since I was 15, a few other things including a laptop I had bought when I went to college. All gone. When we had dogs, they were puppies, they were rowdy and chaotic. Maybe about a year or so old by this point. We were having to sort things in our storage units and it became a 4-day project of almost no sleep. One day I leave to get home so I can get to work and found the door open once again. And our dogs? Nowhere to be found. Eventually we did find them, but one was still missing. Come to find out, one of our neighbors had shot one of them, a Labrador, not the damn pit bull we had for fearing for their lives, I suppose. I skipped work that day to look for the dog. In the end, despite searching and literally being days without real sleep, we stopped looking because the blood trail we were following went cold. It ended abruptly. In this town you can own a gun, you just can't use it. Tyranny, dressed as noise control. What's backwards is that in this town? The past 5 years we've heard a handful of meth labs exploding. No sirens of any kind. Random gunshots from out of nowhere. No sirens. For some reason the police in this town seem odd. Sure, I've become cordial with a couple here, however they kind of seem like the black sheep, I suppose. In recent years I've had my bike stolen 3 separate times. What didn't help was that they were locked up in our yard, and someone for some reason jumped our fence, cut the locks, and I suppose with help, stole the bike over the fence. Worst of all, that bike was literally my only form of transportation. So getting to and from work was a pain. Money was tight, but still I had to figure things out. Eventually we did get the bike back, thankfully to the local PD. But the second and third time? The second time it was taken from the backyard again, and this time to my surprise PD actually being vocal with me about their searches, like they took it seriously, which I appreciated. In the end, that bike was returned. Not by the PD, but I guess by the person who took it. Perhaps I have a guardian angel? The third time I stopped by my second job to get some food, but jumped in to help since they needed it. 30 minutes later I find out my bike was jacked for the third time in 5 years. Worst of all, it had my phone, which had everything about my life. Probably just a broke college kid trading my life for a few quick bucks, but little did they know that phone was locked to the cell company. So if they tried to swap the SIM, it wouldn't work. They stole my life in a way, but they got a fancy paperweight instead. Regardless, the following morning on my way to work, PD found the bike and we turned around to head there. The only thing that was missing was my phone. Everything else, including all my work stuff and groceries I had bought the night before, were still there. Petty thief, honestly. Beyond that for a while? Apparently hackers live in this town too, and like to steal data or private information off devices remotely. I'm told this because I hear stories from people in town about it. At times we've had our water siphoned, giving us what should be close to an $80 bill to something like $300 per month. Electricity, we've noticed, was being stolen, forcing us to pay nearly $400 per month at some points. Of course, we had no proof, because any proof we did find was denied, because as soon as we got the proof it became obsolete, like someone was covering their tracks. Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will. And it did. In the end, I have almost zero complaints about the local PD in regards to harassment like it's seen on YouTube, but I can outright say for certainty these cops are so laid back they're blatantly incompetent. To be quite honest, I'd rather see these repeat offenders sit in prison rather than be released. Then again, I suppose this whole town is nothing but crime-ridden, and so all it takes is a snitch to continue to fill the prisons through legitimate means. Moreover, they seem chill in helping out when things go wrong, at least finding some stolen stuff when you're loud enough about it. I suppose I have no real stake or say in regard to law enforcement breaking the law, because I've never personally experienced it. However, that very same argument is ignorant. Because in the end, while I did get my bike back, my cell phone, my laptop, my cards, my dad's pistol, still haven't been found and returned. Worst of all, my father's pistol was indeed found by the PD, but now sits in evidence because it was used in a crime after it had been stolen 3 years ago. So what's the topic for today? The thumbnail says a lot, but I'll elaborate here. Tyranny in our law enforcement. What do I mean? I've seen way too many police interactions, many make me sick. Many actually piss me off, making me think, if I were there I'd put that cop in his place. But then I remind myself, I'd probably end up shot. Shot by some trigger-happy rookie or a tyrant who thinks their badge puts them above the law. The law which is supposed to restrain the cop, not the citizen. Honestly, I resonate with people who review these cases. Channels I would 100% recommend are Audit the Civil Rights Lawyer, Johnny 5-0, and Lackluster. Audit the Audit breaks down real police interactions and grades both citizens and officers on how well they understand and follow the Constitution. They back every point with real case law, all while staying objective and respectful. The Civil Rights Lawyer expands on it, takes things deeper, explaining what happens after a bad stop and how to fight back in court. Johnny 5-0 is a video creator and photographer with in-your-face activism. He shows that you can legally say no to police and walk away. Lackluster keeps the spotlight on abusive cops by sharing citizen footage most media ignores. All these channels, they fight for one core right we often forget about, the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. That's the Fourth Amendment. And to this day the Supreme Court has been hard at work trying to interpret it, even though it's obvious to most of us. At most, it's a little cryptic, but not enough to need decades of bending and twisting. How so? We first must understand where our founding fathers came from. The Crown and an oppressive government. The whole reason our Constitution and our Bill of Rights exist because our founders rejected British oppression. How so? Cops could kick down your door without warrants and look for whatever they wanted. The Crown ruled like it was above everyone. Thin-skinned, power-drunk, and afraid of criticism. Like many tyrants in history. So when we look at our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, the founders wrote it with the sole purpose to empower the people and restrain the government. So tell me, if we were to view the Fourth Amendment through the perspective of the Founding Fathers, what would we see? From their perspective, the government was always the potential aggressor, which meant police, as agents of the state, should never act before a crime occurs. They were meant to be reactive, not proactive. Why? Because a proactive cop may save lives, but in doing so infringes on people's rights. So the argument is tied between empowering the state and the law enforcement at the expense of our constitutional rights or risk losing lives. The truth is, why can't we invest into programs that'll make the average person more aware and more prepared? Why is the answer always to give the state more power? Why can't we invest in making the people stronger, more aware, more prepared? Basic first aid, self-defense training, situational awareness. Like I said in my Second Amendment script, teach people to be safe, lawful gun owners rather than banning the guns criminals will get anyway. When police are called to a scene, the first step should be observation, not intimidation, not escalation. To the law enforcement, if one is called down somewhere, the very officer needs to verify firsthand through passive observation, either or not articulate if a crime has been, is being, or will be committed. And I get it too. Sometimes cops are called down to scenes where it's obvious a crime is being committed and someone is in danger, adrenaline gets going. However, the articulable and verifiable distinction is between an innocent person being harassed by cops and legitimate scenarios where a cop is required to step in with authority. So how do we articulate a legitimate difference between an illegal interaction to a legal interaction? A Second Amendment auditor on YouTube walked into a public park openly carrying what looked like a military-style rifle. But here's the catch. The weapon was technically a pistol, because of the bizarre way gun laws define them. This happened in one of those anti-gun states where even applying for a firearm feels like a crime. When the cops showed up, they came locked and loaded, ready for a war. In the end, I suppose this audit did its job because the cops got educated. However, if the poor guy moved wrong and/or a cop had an itchy trigger finger, that video would go from 2A audit to armed gunmen in park shot by police officers, and would have further reinforced the fear of dangerous weapons and further called for more bans. How is this relevant for the Fourth Amendment? Because the interaction was illegal for this one simple reason. The officers who took the call never took the time to verify the call or to verify the legitimacy of any actual crimes being committed. Armed gunmen with an assault rifle is all they knew. But is that reasonable, articulable suspicion that a crime is being committed? No. Because the officers would first have to passively observe first, and have to verify the call for legitimacy. When the cops appeared, what did they do? Pointed their guns at the auditor, obviously. Instead, they legally, by the Constitution and through the minds of our founders, should have verified if he was actually committing a crime and then approached. Had a crime been committed, I wouldn't be talking about it because no crime was actually committed except for having a pistol that looked like an assault rifle. And if no crime has obviously been committed, the only other thing the officers could do legally was approach with passivity and initiate a consensual interaction. Upon closer inspection, when they approached the auditor, it should have been obvious the firearm he had was indeed legal, and they should have turned around and went about their day. Worst part about it all? The person who called it in clearly had no clue. Like a quote I read recently. Every one of us possesses a device that has access to the entirety of human knowledge in our pockets, and yet we still manage to be wrong about everything. Perhaps they were afraid or concerned when they saw the firearm? Sure. But there is a problematic distinction here. If they were concerned, then why? If they were concerned, it might mean they knew the gun was legal and just didn't like it. Maybe they didn't like the loophole. Maybe they didn't like the message. And if the call was based on fear, then we have to recognize the fact that fear does anything but make us rational. Even hardened special forces, when they suddenly get fearful, rationality goes right out the window until somebody snaps them out of it. With us, citizens who may not have such extensive know-how, many of us look at a firearm and think, oh my God, I'm gonna die, like the thing itself is gonna come alive and just start gunning people down. TV clearly has screwed up people's minds because only guns in Looney Tunes come to life and start shooting. And if it's fear because someone has a firearm, then we're looking at either someone having a traumatic episode from a previous experience or woefully ignorant, and labels even law-abiding citizens with a gun as terrorists. And so, I just have to ask this simple question. Why can't we invest into programs that helps make people more aware about the law, helps make people more aware to be able to functionally distinct between a genuine AK-47 and a pistol that happens to look like one? In regards to our Fourth Amendment, we face genuine tyranny within our law enforcement, And the legislative, including the Supreme Court, are just as corrupt. Why? Because they were sworn into a system that has been fabricated to exploit the people and give handouts to their friends. Honestly, all three branches of government have abandoned their duty to serve the Constitution, and in doing so have crossed into tyranny. Why? Our legislature writes unconstitutional laws, our judiciary twists the meaning of the Constitution, and our executive signs wars we never voted for, using our tax dollars to fund foreign interests while our streets crumble. Moreover, a president who got us involved into a war that provides no genuine benefit to the American people. A president who backpedaled on their promises to the American people. A president who increased our spending by another $1 trillion per year. And where did this money go? Not to American infrastructure. The military-industrial complex got a $1 trillion bonus. We have legislators who vote for illegal and unconstitutional laws, abridging and infringing on the rights of the American people because they were bought out by foreign interests, lobbying groups, and other special interest groups like big business, banks, and others who literally hoard money. We've had legislators for nearly 300 years infringing on our rights as Americans, and we blew it off because we to this day think our government will never betray us. This is America, it wouldn't be legal. And here I am telling you this. America has been a police state since it's been born. Perhaps not designed to be originally, but it certainly became it almost immediately. And coming in full circle, our judicial system punishes the law-abiding, and gives free passes to actual criminals and traitors to our Constitution, traitors to the American people. Sure, I get there are plenty of laws in place for good reasons, however. The laws made aren't in good faith. They're intended to depower the American people, enable corruption, and force upward mobility on wealth and power. Why do you think we need $100,000 to survive in many places in America, yet the average wage is less than $40,000 annually? Because our government doesn't work for the people. It never has. How so? Fahrenheit 451, Uncle Tom's Cabin, To Kill a Mockingbird. 1940s to 50s, then came the Red Scare, where being accused of thinking the wrong thoughts could get you blacklisted, fired, or dragged before Congress. It didn't matter if it was true, but only that someone pointed their finger. 1917 to 1918? During World War I, just handing out anti-draft pamphlets could land you 10 years in prison under the Espionage Act. 1798. We passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, making it illegal to criticize the government. In 2001, we passed the Patriot Act. Need I say more? Because even our Second Amendment rights are being dismantled as we speak, and yet, nobody pays attention to the foreign countries who say, do not let go of your guns. Seems like we're pious and arrogant because we think, this is America, it can't happen here, when it really is happening here. As I said before, the American government doesn't serve the people. We the people serve the government. The government is our masters, and we are as a result its sheep. Taking another dive into infringements of our Fourth Amendment rights? We are not a stop and ID country, yet you can get arrested for failing to provide that ID. These tyrant cops are hypocrites, apparently. What if you wave a vulgar flag in protest? You get harassed by the police, regardless if any complaint they have against you is legitimate or not. And if you refuse to do what they say, they arrest you, then charge you for resisting because you did literally nothing wrong. And what happens to these cops? Literally almost nothing. No firing, no criminal charges, no prison time. Which basically says, hey, it's legal to break the law because there is no consequence to our bad actions. You legally carry a firearm on you, open carry even, and cops watch you like they're expecting you to be the next mass shooter. You stop in your parking lot, and for some reason the way you got out of your car is suspicious, and it leads you to become paralyzed because the cop decided to throw you to the ground head first into the asphalt. At your home, a paraplegic, accused of breaking down a door. How? He couldn't even walk. But they charged him anyway. And the supervisor? Didn't even come to the scene. And the supervisors for the day? Lazy and don't even bother to see for themselves. When authority goes unchecked, ego replaces duty, and officers escalate, not to protect the public but to assert dominance. I've seen way too many fake crying to know when someone is being real and illegitimate. The fact is, most cops don't go that far in killing people. The bad apples ruin the whole bunch. But the fact remains that your average Terry stop shouldn't result in someone literally getting killed because a cop was on a power trip. Your average Terry stop should be based on genuine reasons, not fabricated to satisfy a quota, which, by the way, officers may not be officially rewarded for arrests, but departments often track performance metrics that quietly incentivize stops, tickets, and arrests. When crime stats drop, so do promotions and funding. That creates pressure, dangerous pressure. Besides, you don't get paid extra for being a good cop either. In fact, there isn't any genuine incentive to be a good cop. So let's ask this question: if there is no incentive to be a good cop, then who are all cops? Let's talk about qualified immunity. Never did I ever think I can break into some random person's home and gun them down while they slept and write in my report. I saw them reaching and I feared for my life, and apply for qualified immunity, to then be granted it and through a loophole get away with murder. Oh wait, that's satirical. Or was it? It's both, because my hyperbolic example is still a real thing. You get pulled over by a cop, and when they request your papers, you reach over for the glove compartment to pull it out, but get gunned down because your pistol accidentally fell out. In my opinion, qualified immunity should be rare exceptions to officers in the line of duty. In fact, what is qualified immunity? I had to look it up, but this is what qualified immunity is defined as. Qualified immunity is the legal shield that protects government officials, especially police, from being held personally liable for violating someone's rights, unless a clearly established law exists saying they can't. To me, that sounds like an excuse to enable for tyranny. However, at the same time, I get the point behind it. But what happens when someone sues under Title 42, Section 1983 and wins, but the officer still gets immunity? It's like saying, yeah, your rights were violated, but we'll let the cop off anyway. You can't have your cake and eat it too with that double standard. Then again, they can, because they did. If a cop files for qualified immunity in nearly every encounter, that doesn't say seasoned officer to me. That says repeat offender with a badge. That tells me I'm not looking at a good cop. I'm looking at a liability wearing a badge. That's too many accidents to be granted in rare cases qualified immunity in my book. And when cops file for qualified immunity, what are the circumstances? Usually it's because they know they broke the law, they just don't want to be punished for it. Technically, it's their lawyers telling them what to do. Which sounds both dumbfounding but also reasonable: a bad cop getting legal representation. It's a scenario where you have a bad cop teamed up with a shady lawyer who will do whatever it takes to win, and then some, protecting a criminal not because it's for justice but because they're getting paid. Imagine yourself as a lawyer, and your job is to lie to the court saying, "My client didn't gun down this entire family, he's innocent," right before the body cam footage is played proving you wrong. In a way, I feel bad for the lawyers because it's frustrating to deal with both innocent and guilty parties. Because you could have a case where someone is innocent, genuinely innocent, but evidence proves him to be the criminal. And cases like this only come back proving otherwise years later when an innocent's life is already ruined. And you got cases where you legitimately have to defend an actual criminal from justice and get off scot-free despite evidence proving their wrongdoing. In the end, qualified immunity is just a loophole to allow corrupt cops to break the law, and needs to be either abolished or heavily ratified. Cops need to be rewarded based on positive crime metrics, not numbers keeping track how many people they arrest, cite, or ticket. When crime runs low, the numbers don't stop, the fabrications begin, and that's when enforcement stops being justice and becomes oppression. To circle back, America is a police state. When law enforcement, even federal agents alike, break the law, nothing happens. And when we get loud enough, the most we usually get is a slap on the wrist. No firings, no criminal charges, no prison time, nothing. I can already hear the counter-arguments. If America was a police state, we wouldn't have the Constitution. The problem is, we are already there. Because when we demand accountability for corrupt cops, almost nothing comes of it. We even vote in people who pass laws that infringe on our rights. It's just not yet at a point where it's blatantly and systematically oppressive. Cops aren't kicking down your doors without cause, not yet. They're not pulling you out of your car and ransacking it over a broken taillight, not yet. But if we stay passive, that future's already loading. It may not look it yet, but we are on the path. America is a police state, not in uniforms and jackboots, but in silence and immunity. We demand justice for corrupt officers, and what do we get? A shrug, a desk job, a pension. We vote for lawmakers who betray us, and we reward them with re-election. We are a police state, not yet in full bloom, but the roots are already deep. If the Founding Fathers were here in America today, they'd be rolling in their graves, but also put in prison because they'd be felons for owning illegal weapons. Imagine that. Our Founding Fathers put in prison because modern America called 1780s warships and early machine guns illegal. What does that say about the identity of our country? America needs to stop just paying attention. America needs to act. America needs accountability. America needs to have Americans against tyranny. Because our beloved country will continue to deteriorate otherwise, and at some point sooner or later America will become the oppressive crown its founders once fled from to build this nation. And in the end, you will reap what you sow, and in this case, rotten fruits from a poisoned tree. A tree poisoned by you. And from this poisoned tree, rotten fruits you will bear, because this country's downfall is because of your inaction to hold our government up to the constitutional standard our Founding Fathers intended. You planted the tree. Now you have two choices. Let it rot, or tear it up from the roots and replant something worth growing. You want liberty? Then fight for it like the founders did. Not with muskets, but with knowledge, with resistance, and with unwavering principle. Be American in the way they meant it, not the way they fear it's become.